My name is Nancy Arkhorn, 22 years old. I have been holding this in for weeks, maybe longer if I am being honest, and I need to get it out before I start thinking I imagined all of it. People love to say families are complicated like that makes everything softer, more forgivable. It does not. Sometimes complicated is just a prettier word for cruel. Before any of this makes sense, you need the part everyone usually skips. The old grief, the original fracture, the house, especially the house. I lost my mom to breast cancer when I was 8. Even now, saying it that plainly feels wrong, like it should come with more thunder behind it. But that is the thing about the worst moments of your life. They do not arrive with music. They happen, and then the room is too quiet after. My father was destroyed in a way that made the whole house feel dimmer. He moved through those first months like a man walking underwater, forgetting where he put things, forgetting what day it was, sometimes staring at the TV without turning it on. I remember standing in the hallway one night, watching him sit at the kitchen table in the dark with one of my mother's sweaters folded beside his arm like it was something alive he was afraid to let go of. If my mother's parents had not stepped in, I do not know what would have happened to us. My grandparents saved more than the practical parts of our lives. They saved the shape of them. They more or less moved in and made sure I was fed, got to school, got hugged, got reminded to keep going. My grandfather handled bills, repairs, errands, all the unglamorous things grief makes impossible. My grandmother kept the house warm. She cooked. She prayed quietly over nothing and everything. She sat on the edge of my bed when nightmares woke me up and brushed my hair back from my face until my breathing slowed. I think she knew I was trying not to cry because everyone else already seemed so broken. The house mattered to them, and later I would understand why. It was this huge 4-bedroom place in one of the nicer neighborhoods outside Boston, the kind of house that looked solid even in winter. Wide front porch, heavy front door, old hardwood floors that creaked in familiar places, hydrangeas lining the walkway, a kitchen that always smelled faintly of coffee and lemon polish no matter what else was cooking. My grandparents were comfortable financially, not flashy, just careful and established, and they bought the house so all of us could live together. The plan was simple. They would help raise me while my father rebuilt himself. For a while, it worked. For a while, that house felt like the one place in the world where loss could not take everything. Then my father met Karen. That is not her real name, but it fits her too well to use anything else. He met her at some business conference in Chicago about 2 years after my mom died. He was trying to expand his consulting business, or maybe just trying to remember there was still a future out there somewhere. She was an event coordinator, all polished smiles and fast eye contact and the kind of energy people mistake for warmth. According to my dad, they clicked instantly. According to literally every instinct I had the first time I met her, she looked at him and saw an opening. She moved across the country after knowing him for 3 months. 3 months. I remember my grandmother pretending not to react when my father told us, but later that night, I heard her in the den whispering to my grandfather, "No one uproots that fast without wanting something." My grandfather answered so quietly, I almost missed it. He is lonely enough not to ask what. They were trying to protect him, even then. 6 months after meeting Karen, my father married her. He said he deserved another chance at happiness. Maybe he did. But what he brought home was not happiness. It was a long, slow occupation. Karen came with 2 children. Tyler, who is 25 now, was 11 back then and already had the swagger of someone who had never once been told no in a way that stuck. Ashley, now 21, was 7 and not nearly as bad at first. Honestly, there were moments early on when I thought she might grow into someone decent. But children absorb the temperature of the room, and Karen trained both of them quickly. Tyler learned entitlement like it was a birthright. Ashley learned performance. Smiles for adults, eye rolls for everyone else. My grandparents tried. That is the part that still hurts. They really did try. They welcomed them, gave up space, adjusted routines, told themselves that love meant patience. But patience became permission in Karen's hands. At first, it was small things, comments about the decor being old-fashioned, suggestions that the kitchen needed updating, little laughs about how set in their ways my grandparents were. She would say these things in a soft, almost amused voice, as if she were trying to be helpful, and my father would smile like that meant they were harmless. I started noticing how often her help involved replacing things that mattered to other people with things that looked more like her. She rearranged furniture without asking. She boxed up some of my mother's decorations and said they were collecting dust. She changed where dishes were kept, where blankets were folded, where framed photos sat. One afternoon, I came home from school and found one of my mom's ceramic angels gone from the mantel. Karen told me it had chipped and she had taken care of it. She said it like she had done me a favor. I nodded because I was 11 and already learning what happened when I showed hurt in front of her. But that night, I cried in the bathroom with the fan on so no one would hear. Then came the chores. At first, even that looked normal. Everyone in a big house should help. That is what I told myself. But somehow everyone slowly turned into me. Tyler was too busy with sports, even though he was terrible at basketball and complained through every practice. Ashley was too young, even when she was only 1 year younger than I was. Karen always had reasons ready before anyone asked. Tyler has training. Ashley has homework. Nancy is just more responsible. Responsible. It became this shiny word people used when they wanted to hand me more weight. By the time I was 12, I was doing most of the cooking and cleaning. I vacuumed, dusted, folded laundry, scrubbed bathrooms, emptied trash, set tables, cleared plates. Karen would run a finger along the baseboards and hold it up if she found dust, not raising her voice, just giving me that look that made me feel 8 inches tall. Meanwhile, Tyler's room smelled like body spray and old pizza, and Ashley left clothes everywhere like she thought the floor itself was a closet. Nothing stuck to them. Everything stuck to me. My father either did not notice or did not want to. I still do not know which is worse. There were nights I wanted him to look at me and really look, see the way I moved through the house, already anticipating what everyone needed, see that I was becoming useful instead of loved. But Karen was clever. She never pushed hard when he was watching. She saved the sharper edges for private moments, for sighs and criticisms and little corrections disguised as life lessons. And my father, relieved to have someone steering the family after so much grief, let her steer all of us. My grandparents saw more than they said. I know that now. Back then, I only caught pieces of it. Low voices after midnight. Long silences at the kitchen table after Karen left the room. The way my grandmother's mouth tightened whenever my mother's name came up, and Karen found a reason to change the subject. Once, I heard my grandfather say, "She is making that child earn her place in her own home." I stood frozen in the hallway with my hand on the banister, listening. My grandmother answered, "I know." Just those 2 words. Soft, furious, helpless. They both passed in 2019. My grandmother first, from heart problems. My grandfather followed less than 3 months later, like half of him had already gone with her, and the rest simply could not stay. After they died, the house changed again. It got louder somehow, but emptier too. Karen took up more space. Tyler and Ashley treated the place like a hotel. My father worked longer hours, and I kept doing what I had always done, trying to hold together a home that no longer felt like mine, not knowing that the 2 people who loved me enough to see the future had already made one final decision meant to protect me. I did not know it then, but before they died, my grandparents put the house in my name. Not my father's, not shared, mine. They must have seen all of it coming from a mile away, the greed, the pressure, the day someone in that house would finally overreach. They must have known I would need more than good memories to survive what this family was becoming. But no one told me, not then. So I kept living inside that house like a servant with no exit, while beneath my feet sat the truth that would one day tear everything open. By the time I turned 22, the system inside that house was so established it almost looked natural from the outside. That was the genius of it. Nothing Karen did ever arrived wearing a villain sign around its neck. It came wrapped in routine, in expectations, in little comments that sounded practical if you did not live under them long enough to hear the contempt underneath. Tyler had graduated college 2 years earlier, barely, and spent most of his life since then in the upstairs bedroom, gaming, streaming, and talking about his content career like internet delusion was a salary. Ashley was in her 3rd year of college, supposedly studying business, though if you judged by her actual behavior, her major was filtered selfies, coffee runs, and posting vague captions about energy and boundaries under photos somebody else probably took. Dad paid for everything. Her apartment near campus, the car she had already wrecked twice, the credit cards she maxed out monthly, without even the decency to look ashamed about it. And me. I worked part-time at Starbucks, took online classes when I could stay awake long enough to focus, and somehow still ended up doing the cooking, the cleaning, the laundry, the dishes, and the invisible labor of keeping a house from collapsing under people who never once asked what it cost me. The thing about exhaustion is that after a while it stops feeling dramatic. It just becomes the weather of your life. I would wake up already tired, work an 8-hour shift, smiling through customer moods and mobile order chaos, come home smelling like espresso and syrup, and still feel the automatic pull toward the kitchen because no one else was going to make dinner. Tyler would shout at strangers through his headset. Ashley would be half watching some reality show while texting 3 people at once. Karen would sit like a queen in exile at the kitchen island, judging everyone's tone but never her own. And Dad, even when he was home, floated around the edges of everything like a man who had mistaken avoiding conflict for keeping peace. That day, the day all of it finally split open, started like every other bad day in that house. I had just finished a brutal shift at Starbucks where a woman yelled at me for using almond milk when she had literally ordered almond milk. And by the time I got home, my feet hurt, my head hurt, and I was so tired my thoughts felt grainy. But tired or not, dinner still had to happen because apparently the family would starve to death if Tyler had to stand up from his gaming chair or Ashley had to put down her phone long enough to boil water. I was in the kitchen, making a pasta recipe I had found online, something creamy and simple that looked forgiving enough to survive the mood I was in. The sauce was starting to come together, garlic and butter in the pan, the kind of smell that usually calmed me down. That was when Karen came in. She was wearing one of her designer outfits, the kind that only looked expensive if you never got close enough to inspect the seams, and she had this expression on her face that always meant she had come in rehearsed. Not angry. Not yet, just composed in that sharp, almost professional way she used when she wanted to make cruelty sound reasonable. She sat down at the kitchen island and watched me cook. She always did that when she had something to say. Hovered just outside the work itself, as if proximity to labor gave her authority over it. I kept stirring the sauce, pretending I did not notice the silence stretching out between us. Last week she had complained I used too much garlic. The week before that, she said my Alfredo had too much spice in it, which still made no sense to me. Nothing was ever just dinner with Karen. It was always an evaluation. "We need to have a serious discussion about your living situation," she said. I actually thought I had misheard her. For a second, I just stared at the stove, spoon in hand, as if the sauce might clarify the sentence for me. My living situation. In the house I had grown up in the house my mother's parents bought. In the kitchen where I had practically raised myself while everyone else performed family around me. I kept my voice level because that was the only thing years with Karen had taught me better than cooking. What living situation? She folded her hands together like she was at a board meeting. "Your father and I have been talking, and we think it is time you start paying rent. You are working now. It is not fair for you to live here for free while we cover all the household expenses." For a second, everything inside me went still. Not blank, not numb, clear. I could hear Tyler upstairs yelling about a game. I could hear Ashley's TikTok sounds bleeding in from the living room. I could hear the burner under the pan and the tiny scrape of Karen's bracelet against the countertop as she adjusted her wrist. And underneath all of it, I could hear the years. Every baseboard I had dusted. Every load of Tyler's disgusting laundry I had washed. Every dish I had put away while Ashley filmed herself doing absolutely nothing. Rent. She wanted rent from me. I turned down the burner before the sauce burned. Even then, part of me was still taking care of things. "What about Tyler and Ashley?" I asked. "Are they paying rent too?" Karen did that awful little mouth dab thing she does with a napkin even when there is no food in front of her, like she is auditioning for a woman she saw on television once and has never quite managed to become. "That is different." "Different how?" "They are my children," she said smoothly, "and they are still getting established in life. Tyler is working on his content creation career. Ashley is focused on school. They need support." I almost laughed. I did not because I wanted to hear how far she would take it. But inside, something cold and bright started rising in me. Tyler's career was him dancing badly on TikTok and shouting at 12-year-olds on Twitch for an audience of maybe 3, one of whom was probably himself. Ashley had not looked at a textbook with honest intention in years. She was studying the angle of her own face, not business. And I do not need support, I asked. Karen tilted her head, that fake sympathetic angle she used when she wanted to insult you while pretending she was worried about your future. Nancy, you are more mature, more responsible. You have always been capable. This is part of becoming an adult. There it was again. Responsible. Capable. The language people use when they have decided your strength disqualifies you from tenderness. I kept stirring the sauce slowly, mostly so I would not throw the spoon across the room. Then she gave me the number. Your father and I think $800 a month is fair, she said. Plus utilities, of course, and naturally we would still expect you to help around the house, since we all live here and family contributes. $800, plus utilities, plus continue being their maid. I looked at her then, really looked at her, the confidence in her face, the assumption, the genuine belief that this conversation would end with me flustered, maybe upset, but compliant. That was the part that stunned me most. Not the greed, the certainty. She had trained this family dynamic so carefully over the years that she truly believed I would swallow anything if she said it in the right tone. Behind her, through the entryway, I could see Ashley on the couch without moving anything but her thumbs. Somewhere upstairs, Tyler shouted something about his kill streak. The whole house seemed to reveal itself in one ugly flash. Not as home, as a machine. One that ran because I kept running. I set the spoon down. Let me get this straight, I said. And my own voice surprised me because it was calmer than I felt. Tyler, who has not earned $1 since graduation and spends his days yelling into a headset, does not pay rent. Ashley, who burns through Dad's money like it is a hobby and has never touched a vacuum in her life, does not pay rent. But I do. Karen's face twitched, just slightly. The mask slipped, then snapped back into place. That is not what I said. It is exactly what you said. She sighed and leaned back like I was being emotional, and she was bearing it with impressive patience. Nancy, you always make things sound harsher than they are. Family helps family. This is a simple matter of contribution. Family helps family. That one almost did make me laugh, because what she meant was, I help this family, and this family helps itself. I thought about every time I had come home sick and still made dinner. Every birthday where Ashley got something expensive and I got something thoughtful, which usually meant cheap. Every holiday where Karen somehow repositioned herself in photos until she looked like the center of a story she had entered late. Every time Dad had seen enough to ask one question and then let her answer it for both of them. Something in me snapped then. Not loudly, not dramatically. It snapped the way ice cracks across a whole lake at once, quietly but beyond repair. Okay, I said. Karen blinked. Okay? Okay, let us talk about it with everyone. Her eyes sharpened. What do you mean? I mean, if we are discussing household finances and fairness, then we should do it as a family. I turned off the stove. Right? Since this affects everyone. For one brief second, I think she heard something in my voice that made her nervous, but she hid it fast. Karen has always loved an audience when she thinks she is in control. Fine, she said. That might actually be best. I called everyone to the dining room myself. Tyler came down complaining that he was in the middle of a game, like being interrupted by real life was a personal attack. Ashley arrived with her phone in her hand and that bored little expression she uses when she thinks something messy is about to happen to somebody else. Karen followed behind me, with the posture of a woman about to preside over a judgment she had already decided. The pasta sat forgotten on the stove, getting colder by the minute. I did not care. I had lost my appetite the second she said rent. We all sat at the table, the same table where my grandparents used to drink coffee in the morning. The same table where my mother once helped me make construction paper valentines for school. I remember that suddenly, painfully, the way memory sometimes cuts right through anger and makes it heavier. Karen started explaining her proposal in that polished voice of hers, laying it out like she was doing something noble. Tyler smirked halfway through, probably already imagining how much freer his life would be if I started paying bills too. Ashley tilted her phone lazily, not obviously recording, but enough for me to know she might be. She loves drama as long as it is happening to someone else. I let Karen finish. I let the silence settle, and then I looked at all of them, one by one, and said the sentence that changed everything. I am not paying rent, I said, because this house belongs to me. The silence after that did not feel like ordinary silence. It felt like the moment right before glass breaks. For a few seconds after I said it, no one reacted. It was the strangest silence I had ever experienced, like the whole room had paused to decide whether what I said belonged in reality or not. Tyler had a fork halfway to his mouth, with a strand of spaghetti dangling off it. Ashley's phone was still pointed lazily at the table, her expression frozen, somewhere between boredom and confusion. Karen was staring at me, with the same blank look a computer screen gets when the system crashes. Then Tyler laughed. Not a polite laugh either. A loud, choking snort that sprayed pasta sauce onto his chin. "Good one," he said, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand like a toddler. "Did you get that from TikTok or something?" Ashley giggled too, already leaning back in her chair like she was watching a comedy sketch instead of the moment her entire lifestyle was about to collapse. "Wait, say it again," she said, lifting her phone slightly. "That was actually funny." Karen forced a laugh, but it came out thin and wrong. I could see the panic creeping into her eyes, the way it always did when she realized a situation was drifting outside her control. Her fingers tapped the countertop once, twice, the fake calm starting to crack. "What are you talking about?" she said finally, her voice sharper than she probably meant it to be. "This house belongs to your father and me." I leaned back in my chair and folded my hands together, copying the same calm posture she had used earlier while telling me to pay rent. "Why don't you call Dad?" I said, "and ask him." That was when the room shifted. Karen did not like being challenged in front of witnesses. Her entire authority in this house depended on people assuming she was right before checking the facts. But now everyone was watching her. Even Tyler had stopped smirking. Ashley's phone lowered just slightly. Karen grabbed her iPhone. Her nails tapped against the screen so fast I thought she might crack the glass. She hit the call button and immediately put it on speaker, because Karen loved an audience when she believed she was about to win. The phone rang 3 times before my dad answered. "Hello?" He sounded tired. That deep, worn-out tired that had been living in his voice for years. "David," Karen said sweetly, instantly switching into the syrupy tone she used when she wanted something. "Nancy is telling us some very interesting stories about the house." There was a pause on the line. "She says it belongs to her," Karen continued lightly. "That's not true, right?" The silence that followed felt heavy. I could almost hear my father thinking. Then he did that thing he always did when he was uncomfortable. He cleared his throat. "Well," he said slowly, "technically, my in-laws put the house in Nancy's name before they passed away." Boom! Karen's face went through 3 colors in about 2 seconds. Red first, then white, then this weird grayish shade that made her look like someone had unplugged her. "What do you mean they put it in her name?" she snapped. My father sighed on the other end of the phone. "They transferred the deed before your mother passed," he said to me quietly, like he suddenly remembered I existed. "They wanted to make sure you would always have somewhere safe." Karen shot to her feet so fast the chair scraped violently across the floor. "And when were you planning on telling me this?" she demanded. "I didn't think it was important," my dad said weakly. "Not important." Karen's hand slammed down on the table so hard the phone bounced. "You didn't think it was important to tell me that your teenage daughter owns our house?" she shouted. She hung up before he could answer. The phone clattered onto the table. For the first time in years, the entire power structure of the room had flipped. Tyler was no longer laughing. His face had gone pale, like he had just realized every time he told me to get out of his game room, he had actually been yelling at the legal owner of the house. Ashley looked like someone had unplugged her personality. The phone was still in her hand, but she was no longer recording. Karen was breathing hard, her shoulders rising and falling like she had just run up a flight of stairs. She tried to compose herself. "Well," she said, forcing a tight smile, "this is clearly a misunderstanding. Of course you don't have to pay rent, Nancy. Let's just forget this conversation happened." Forget. That word made something inside me harden. I had spent years forgetting. Forgetting the way she criticized everything I did. Forgetting the chores that magically became my responsibility. Forgetting the nights I went to bed exhausted while everyone else treated the house like a hotel. Forgetting the 1,000 little humiliations that slowly turned me into the family servant. I was done forgetting. "Oh," I said slowly, smiling back at her. "We're definitely not forgetting this conversation." Karen's smile faltered. "In fact," I continued, leaning forward slightly, "I think it's time we had a serious discussion about your living situation." For a moment, Karen just stared at me. The same words she had used earlier now hung in the air between us. Tyler looked like he might throw up. Ashley looked like she wanted to disappear. Karen opened her mouth, then closed it again. And for the first time since she entered my life 12 years ago, she had absolutely no idea what to say. That night I went to bed feeling something I had not felt in years. Relief. The kind that comes when you finally stop pretending everything is fine. I slept better than I had in months. But Karen was not done. Not even close. The next morning I woke up early and headed downstairs, expecting the usual routine. coffee, breakfast, silence. Instead, I heard Karen's voice in the kitchen. She was on the phone. Speakerphone. And the second I realized who she was talking to, I stopped halfway down the stairs. David, she was saying sharply, you need to do something about this situation. Your daughter is becoming a problem. My chest tightened. What do you want me to do? My dad asked tiredly. Karen lowered her voice slightly, the manipulative sweetness creeping back in. What about those out-of-state colleges she applied to, she said. You could encourage her to go to one of them. Tell her it would be good for her independence. I gripped the stair railing so hard my knuckles turned white. She was trying to get me out of the house. My house. She's young, Karen continued softly. She needs to experience life away from home, and honestly, she paused. I'm worried about her mental health. All this anger she's carrying around isn't healthy. I almost laughed. The only thing affecting my mental health was living with the human embodiment of a Disney villain. My dad hesitated. Then he said the thing that made my stomach drop. And maybe you're right, he murmured. I'll talk to her about moving out for college. It might be better for everyone. Better for everyone. I stood there on the stairs for a long time after the call ended. My own father had just agreed to help push me out of my own house. For a second, I wanted to scream. Instead, I pulled out my phone and hit record. If Karen wanted to play games, I was done playing fair. I walked into the kitchen like I had heard absolutely nothing. Karen nearly dropped her phone when she saw me. She was standing there in a silk robe that probably came from a discount rack somewhere, holding her stupid, world's best mom coffee mug that Tyler and Ashley bought her for $2 last Mother's Day. Good morning, sweetie, she chirped brightly. Sweetie, since when? I made coffee, she added. She had not made coffee. She had put a K-cup into the Keurig I bought with my Starbucks paycheck. Tyler stumbled into the kitchen looking half dead, probably after staying up all night streaming to 3 viewers. Ashley came in a few minutes later, already camera ready, like she was about to attend the Met Gala instead of breakfast. The 4 of us sat at the table. I made breakfast. Karen does not cook anything that does not come from a microwave. The tension in the room was thick enough to slice with a knife. Tyler shoveled cereal into his mouth while scrolling TikTok. Ashley took photos of her untouched avocado toast for Instagram. Karen pretended to read emails while secretly Googling how to evict someone. She tilted the phone just enough that I could see the screen. Not subtle. That was when I decided to have a little fun. Hey, Karen, I said casually. She looked up immediately. Yes? I was thinking about what you said yesterday about rent. Her eyes lit up slightly. She thought I was backing down. I think you're right, I continued. People should pay rent to live here. Relief spread across her face. It lasted about 2 seconds. Based on market rates in this area, I said calmly, I think $1,200 per person is fair. The room went completely still. That's $3,600 a month for you, Tyler and Ashley, I added. Utilities not included, and of course there will be a security deposit. Chaos erupted. Chaos did not even begin to cover it. Tyler choked so violently on his cereal I thought he might actually need medical attention. Milk dribbled down his chin while he coughed and swore, staring at me like I had just announced gravity was optional now. Ashley's avocado toast slipped right off her plate and landed face down on the front of her brand new, white crop top. She stared at it in horror for a full second before shrieking, which honestly felt like a very small form of cosmic justice. Karen froze. Not dramatic freezing. The unsettling kind, like her brain had completely lost the ability to process new information. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. For a moment I almost felt bad. Almost. You can't be serious, she sputtered finally. Oh, I'm completely serious, I said, taking a calm sip of coffee. But we're family! The way she said it was almost impressive. 12 years of treating me like unpaid staff, and suddenly the word family had become her emergency parachute. Exactly, I said. And according to you, family contributes. Tyler slammed his spoon into the bowl. This is bull... He stopped himself just short of finishing the sentence when he realized Karen was still staring at me, like a bomb had gone off in the middle of the kitchen. Ashley wiped avocado off her shirt, already looking like she might cry. Dad won't let you do this, she said. He loves us more than that. I did not even answer her. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Speaking of Dad, I said lightly, we should probably talk about that phone call this morning. Karen's head snapped toward me. What phone call? The one where you suggested shipping me off to an out-of-state college so you could keep living here rent-free. The color drained from her face so quickly it was almost fascinating. Tyler stopped chewing. Ashley blinked. Karen's voice came out tight. What are you talking about? I tapped the screen on my phone. The recording began playing. Her voice filled the kitchen instantly. David, You need to do something about this situation. Your daughter is becoming a problem. Karen's eyes widened as the rest of the conversation played, the syrupy manipulation. The suggestion about out-of-state colleges. The fake concern about my mental health. My father's tired agreement. The recording ended. The silence that followed felt like the house itself was holding its breath. Karen stood up so fast her chair tipped backward and slammed onto the floor. "You recorded me?" she screamed. I shrugged. "We live in a one-party consent state," I said calmly. "I checked." Her face twisted. "That's illegal." "Actually," I said, leaning back in my chair, "it isn't. Also, my house, my rules." Tyler looked back and forth between us like he was watching a tennis match. Ashley's phone slowly lowered to the table. Karen began pacing across the kitchen floor, her knockoff designer slides slapping loudly against the tile. This is unbelievable," she muttered. "Completely unbelievable." Then she stopped pacing and switched tactics instantly. Her shoulders relaxed. Her voice softened. She looked at me with fake concern. "Nancy, sweetie," she said gently. "I know you're upset, but this kind of behavior isn't healthy." There it was, the concerned parent act. "Your father and I are only trying to help you," she continued. "Maybe some time away would be good. There's a lovely college in Michigan." "Karen," I cut her off. Her smile faltered. "Let me make something very clear," I said slowly. "I am not going anywhere." The room went quiet again. "This house is mine," I continued. "The deed is in my name, and if anyone is leaving, it won't be me." Something in her finally snapped. "You ungrateful little—" She stopped just short of finishing the insult, but the word hung in the air anyway. Karen launched into a full meltdown. She shouted about how she had raised me like her own child, which was hilarious considering the way that raising mostly involved turning me into the household maid. She talked about the sacrifices she made to be a stepmother. She talked about how I was tearing the family apart. What family? Meanwhile, Tyler and Ashley were spiraling in their own ways. "I'm not paying rent," Tyler said loudly. "I'm about to blow up on Twitch." Narrator. He was not about to blow up on Twitch. Ashley folded her arms. "Dad will never let you kick us out." I just watched them. 12 years of entitlement pouring out of them like water from a broken pipe. Finally, Karen grabbed her phone again. "Fine," she snapped. "We'll call your father." She dialed him and immediately put the call on speaker. The phone rang once, twice. Then my dad answered. "Hello?" "David," Karen said sharply, "you need to come home right now. Your daughter is out of control." There was a pause. Then my father spoke again. But this time his voice sounded different. Not strong, just tired. "Karen," he said quietly, "we need to respect that it's her house." The words landed like a hammer. Karen froze. "Maybe," he continued, "we should start looking for another place." The silence in the kitchen became suffocating. Tyler stared at the floor. Ashley looked like someone had just unplugged her reality. Karen's face went through a slow transformation. Shock, anger, disbelief, then something else. Fear, real fear. Because for the first time since she moved into that house 12 years earlier, Karen understood something she had never considered before. She was losing. And that was when she made her biggest mistake. She stepped forward until she was inches from my face. Her voice dropped to a cold whisper. "I don't care whose name is on the deed," she hissed. "This is my house. I've lived here for 12 years and no spoiled brat is going to kick me out." She leaned closer. "I will make your life hell." I smiled. Because she had just said that in front of 3 witnesses. And my phone was still recording. "Perfect," I said quietly. Karen blinked. "What?" "I'm glad you said that." I held up my phone. "I've already talked to a lawyer." The room went dead silent again. Karen's eyes widened. Turns out threatening the legal owner of a property is not a great move. Who knew? After that breakfast meltdown, things moved fast. Like faster than Karen could keep up with. The moment she threatened me, I already knew what my next step was going to be. The truth is, I had started preparing the night before. After the dinner disaster, when Dad confirmed on speaker that the house was legally mine, I stayed up for hours doing research. Reddit threads, legal forums, state housing laws, everything I could find about property rights and eviction procedures, and by the next morning I had already scheduled a consultation with a real lawyer. Best decision I ever made. Turns out my grandparents had been far more careful than anyone realized. They did not just put the house in my name casually. They set up a full legal structure around it. My lawyer explained it like this. The house had been transferred into a trust with me as the legal beneficiary and controlling resident once I became an adult. Basically, it made it extremely difficult for anyone else to contest ownership or manipulate the deed. When she saw the paperwork my grandparents left behind, she literally laughed. Not in a mocking way, in a whoever set this up knew exactly what they were doing kind of way. "So your stepmother threatened you?" she asked while flipping through the documents. "On recording," I said. Her eyebrows went up. "Well," she said, leaning back in her chair, "that certainly simplifies things." The next step was eviction. I will never forget the moment the official papers were served. Karen opened the door that afternoon expecting a package delivery. Instead, she found a process server standing there with a clipboard and a calm, professional smile. "Karen Mitchell?" he asked. "Yes?" "You've been served." The look on her face was priceless. Pure confusion at first, then disbelief, then rage. She tried to refuse the papers. Apparently that does not work. The server calmly left them on the entry table and walked away while Karen stood there sputtering. Tyler's reaction was exactly what you would expect from someone who had never faced consequences before. He threw his gaming chair down the stairs. It broke. Honestly, poetic justice. Ashley had a full meltdown online. She went live on Instagram crying about toxic family betrayal and being kicked out of the only home she has ever known. Somehow she gained 200 followers during the drama, which she treated like a victory. Karen, however, went completely nuclear. First, she started calling lawyers. All of them. Literally every attorney within 30 miles. But here is the thing about small legal communities. They talk. After the first few lawyers told her she had no case, word spread fast. By the end of the day, even her cousin, the one she always bragged about being a real estate attorney, refused to touch the situation. Turns out he mostly handles DUI cases out of a strip mall office. Then Karen tried the social media sympathy approach. She posted this dramatic Facebook essay about how her ungrateful stepdaughter was trying to make the family homeless. But that backfired almost immediately. One of my mom's old friends commented with receipts, screenshots of Karen's passive-aggressive posts over the years, stories about how Karen treated me at family gatherings. People started chiming in. Suddenly, Karen's narrative started collapsing in real time. Her fancy country club friends stopped liking her posts. A few quietly unfollowed her. Funny how fast people disappear when the illusion of wealth disappears too. Meanwhile, Tyler and Ashley were having identity crises. Tyler realized pretty quickly that professional gamer is not a convincing explanation when landlords ask about employment. He tried applying for real jobs. His resume basically said streamer, content creator, and Fortnite specialist. Shockingly, employers were not impressed. Ashley's sorority friends found out about everything because she overshared the drama on her private story. Now, the same girls who used to compliment her outfits were whispering about whether her designer bags were fake, which, judging by some of the peeling labels later, they probably were. But the real turning point came a few days later. Karen thought she could still outmaneuver me. She waited until I was at work. Then she tried to steal from me. When I got home that night, my phone already had the notification, motion detected, security camera footage. Because yes, after the breakfast threats and eviction notice, I installed cameras throughout the house. Every entrance, every hallway. Best $200 I ever spent. I opened the footage and watched. Karen was in my mom's old bedroom. She was going through the jewelry box my grandparents had left me. And not just looking. She was stuffing necklaces into her purse. My mom's antique necklaces. The ones my grandmother used to polish every Christmas. The ones Karen had always pretended were old-fashioned junk. I did not even hesitate. I called the police. When the officer arrived, Karen tried the same fake tears she always used to manipulate people. "Oh, officer," she said dramatically. "It's all just a misunderstanding. We're family." The officer was an older woman who clearly had zero patience for nonsense. She looked at the footage, then looked at Karen. "Attempting to remove property from a residence you don't legally own isn't a family matter," she said flatly. Karen's mascara did not even run. Waterproof makeup ruins dramatic moments. I decided not to press charges immediately. My lawyer actually advised against it for the moment. Instead, we documented everything for the eviction case. Karen's attempted theft became legal ammunition. And let me tell you something. Watching the woman who spent 12 years acting like the queen of that house suddenly realize she had absolutely no power left, that was satisfying in a way I cannot even describe. Because for the first time since she walked into our lives, Karen understood something very simple. The game was over. After the jewelry incident, Karen finally understood she was out of moves. But being Karen, she refused to go quietly. The official eviction deadline was approaching fast, and instead of packing like a normal person, she decided to stage one final performance. The night before the deadline, she announced that the family needed to have one last conversation. The way she said it sounded like she was preparing to deliver a royal decree instead of being legally removed from a house she did not own. I already knew it should be a show. Karen came downstairs wearing one of her favorite outfits, the fake Chanel suit she always insisted was vintage, even though the stitching pattern was completely wrong. Her makeup was perfect, hair done, posture straight. She looked like someone preparing for a press conference. Tyler and Ashley sat on opposite sides of the table looking miserable. Tyler had dark circles under his eyes from weeks of late-night panic gaming sessions. Ashley had clearly been crying earlier because her mascara was slightly smudged under her eyes. For once, neither of them were on their phones. Karen stood at the head of the table like she was about to address a courtroom. "I have decided," she began dramatically, "that it is best for this family if I remove myself from this toxic environment." I almost laughed, but I let her continue. "Your father and I have decided to move to Florida," she said proudly. "We've already found a beautiful house in Tampa. Frankly, it's much nicer than this old place." The lie hung in the air so thick it could have been wallpaper. First of all, they had not bought anything. I had already seen the GoFundMe she started earlier that week, titled Family Crisis Housing Fund. It had raised exactly $43. Second, my dad was not even there. He had moved into a hotel after the jewelry incident. Apparently, watching your wife try to steal your late wife's jewelry is a pretty effective relationship killer. Karen continued talking like she was giving an acceptance speech. "I'm choosing to leave with dignity," she said, lifting her chin slightly, "because sometimes the strongest thing a woman can do is walk away." Right on cue, the front door opened. 3 large moving guys walked into the house carrying dollies. The timing could not have been better. Karen froze mid-sentence. What is this?" she demanded. The head mover, a tall guy named Mike, glanced at the paperwork in his hand. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "we have instructions to pack and move all belongings belonging to you, Tyler, and Ashley to the storage unit listed in the order." Karen blinked. "You can't just come in here." Mike shrugged slightly. "We have a court order." Then they started packing. Chaos erupted instantly. Karen began screaming about needing more time to organize her belongings. Tyler ran upstairs trying to disconnect his gaming setup before someone touched it. Ashley started crying about her TikTok filming backdrop being dismantled. Karen grabbed random items off shelves, insisting they were family heirlooms, including my mother's ceramic bowl, the same one she tried to throw away last year. The movers were completely unfazed. They packed everything methodically while Karen's meltdown escalated into full hysteria. Boxes stacked up in the living room. Furniture got wrapped in protective blankets. Tyler nearly had a panic attack trying to pack his cables. Ashley was crying into her phone, telling someone her life was ruined. Meanwhile, I sat on the couch drinking coffee. In my house, watching 12 years of entitlement get packed into cardboard boxes. The best moment came when the movers started packing Karen's designer collection. Half the labels literally peeled off while they handled the bags. Turns out most of them were fake. Who could have guessed? Karen tried to accuse the movers of damaging her property. The sheriff's deputy who arrived for the official walkthrough simply pointed at my security cameras and asked if she wanted to file a false report. She shut up immediately. The final inventory of things Karen tried to take on her way out was impressive. 3 of my mother's necklaces, my grandmother's china, the expensive coffee machine I bought with my Starbucks paychecks, and for some reason every single towel in the house. I let her keep the towels. I had already ordered new ones. Really nice ones. Eventually, the last box was carried out. Karen stood in the driveway, surrounded by the remains of the life she thought she owned. Tyler loaded his last box into a rideshare and left to move into some shared rental house with 3 roommates. He ended up getting a job at GameStop, which honestly might be the healthiest thing that has ever happened to him. Ashley tried living with her sorority sisters, but that lasted about a week before they got tired of the drama. Now she commutes 2 hours to school from her aunt's place. Karen and my dad ended up staying at her sister's apartment in the next town over. From what I heard, it is not going well. Her sister posted a Facebook status recently complaining about house guests who never wash dishes. Funny how life works. As for me, the house is quiet now. Not the uncomfortable silence from before, a peaceful quiet. The kind that makes you realize how loud tension really was once it disappears. Tyler's old room is now my home office. Ashley's room is becoming my dream closet. Karen's meditation room, where she used to sit watching Real Housewives all afternoon, is now my yoga space. Sometimes I walk through the hallway and still expect to hear someone yelling or complaining, but mostly it is just calm. My mom's best friend Sarah moved into one of the spare rooms recently. She has been teaching me all the recipes my mom used to make and helping me replace things Karen threw away over the years. Dad calls sometimes. He still sounds tired, But for the first time in a long time, he also sounds honest. Like he is finally seeing things clearly. Do I regret how everything happened? Not really. Because sometimes the only way to stop being someone's doormat is to stand up and make them step off. And sometimes karma shows up wearing eviction papers.